analysis, the president doesn't even have to sit down with it. He can say, yeah, we do, and who else would you like to have on it? The president may look at you and say, well, why don't your committee do it, which would be fine, or I would like you to include the program chairman, I'd like you to include a few other people on this, would you do this, and let that committee get together and work. In the back.
The E-Club
Yep.
person, what's your name?
Tressa.
Tressa?
Tressa.
Nice to meet you. In keeping, like, the thought you brought up today of just keeping Rotarians in Rotary. So, I mean, to me, it would seem like every membership chair should be communicating with Tressa as a last ditch on those leaving, just as a thought.
It's a wonderful thought, and it's a good thought, it's a thought, and it is not in our book, but it's a thought that has come forward frequently, recently to me, and I will repeat the way I hear it. Some people don't have the time to make the meetings, but they do have the time to do it through an E-Club. And so when there is an exit interview, that question should be asked, would you be interested in remaining in Rotary if you could do it through an E-Club?
Well, and then the thought would be to just get them their email and so on. So do you have a list, I'm sure, an email list?
We have an email list, but we have our website.
Right, but I mean an email list for like prospects.
All right, so let's help develop this just a little bit, because you're absolutely right and you're on the right track. Roy, where are you? Okay. All right, so Roy, what you're hearing, and so you should be listening and figuring out, hey, this is something that the district can do by saying, all right, we will get together with the E-Club, we will get that information out to all the other clubs, we won't expect them to do it. This is a district-wide responsibility because it's going cross-club. And we will do that, and we will make the recommendations as we're doing right now to everybody, that when you have your exit interview, hey, this should go. When you might also, and I'm just thinking on the top of my head, say, look, I'd like to know whoever leaves Rotary, and maybe it'll be done on the district level itself because the other club might just forgot, well, we just reported he left and we didn't do an exit interview. But you see what I'm talking about now is that we're strategizing and we're sitting down and we're beginning to think how we're going to succeed. We're no longer sitting up here and saying, well, everybody get out there and ask me need new members. Okay? We all know that. We already know that we need new members. Let me ask you this question. Why do we need new members? Does anyone have any idea? To grow. Hey,
To exist.
That works. To grow, okay, but why else do we need new members? In the green.
Yeah, well, I have a question here.
Wait a minute, I want this question answered. I'll come back to you. I want this question answered first.
Revitalize the organization.
Revitalize the organization. I want you to know something. I am not interested in the numbers. That's the truth. I am not. But I am a Rotarian. And I believe in humanitarian service. And when you heard my introduction, I hope you listened to it. When we had the last campaign that really worked, what did it generate?
55,000.
55,000 members, that's the number. But what did that generate? $25 million and 7 million hours of humanitarian service. And that's the one I'm interested in. And when we begin to say, hey, look, I belong to this organization because it's in my heart. It's in here. It's what happens that I see happening and how we affect the world. And that's what we need is more bodies in order to affect the world and do the good in Rotary. Then we're really understanding what it is that this is all about. This is not about numbers. It's about humanitarian service. And I can say that to you because in the committee meetings, one of the individuals looked at me and said, you don't really care, do you, how many the numbers are? I said, that's right, I don't. He said, but what you care about is people. I said, that's right. And I do, because I've seen their lives change. And all of our lives change. And sometimes when we do things, we don't even realize what's going to happen. We have no idea. We're doing all of this good community service. I'm going to give you a little story, but it describes really what happens. And you don't know this. So, I'm a young president in my 20s, and I don't know a hill of beans about anything. But I live in a small farming community, and we had one doctor who was a Rotarian. And I knew he was being worked to death, and he needed help. And so I called him, and I asked him if he'd be on the community service committee. And I said, what I would like to do is I'd like to get another doctor in our community. And he looked at me and says, Ken, I've been trying for 10 years and nobody's going to come. It's just too small, it's too far out of the way, and nobody's going to come. But let me think on it. I will take charge of this committee. Now, you need to know that a good leader steps back and says, okay, it's in your ballpark. And so from there, I'm out of this. I'm not really in it anymore. He is. He comes back with his committee, and he had a committee, and he says, we think we can get paramedics in our community. Okay. What's it going to cost us? $100,000 a year. We're 30 members. This is that project I was telling you about, okay? We held a club assembly. He says, are we going to do this or not? And we came up with a concept that we could do this if we could get the public to support it through the property taxes. And so we decided that's what we were going to do. And of course we went to the fire department. Now this is the great part. The fire department did not want anything to do with paramedics. This is before, I'm going back, you know, I'm an older man now. Okay. And they said, are you kidding, paramedics? Why would we want paramedics? And they put up all kinds of roadblocks for us. And we really wanted 3 paramedic units. And they thought that if they just kept reducing the size, because the territory not only included our little town, but it also included an adjoining little town smaller than ours, and they went all the way into the city of Fresno, into what they call the Fig Garden area, which they really had the tax base that we were hoping to get a hold of, okay? But the fire department was very smart. They said, we're just gonna squeeze it down, take your tax base away from you, and make it so small that it's just gonna be your little town of Kerman that's gonna get this. But Rotary said, that's fine, that's what you want. And every single Rotarian was involved in one way or another that year in bringing paramedics. My job was to go out and give speeches. I gave 25 of them. I can remember the speech at the Lions Club. Oh my gosh, these guys were drilling me like crazy until one of the Lions members, the most prominent one of their group, said, why are we drilling Ken? This is really a good idea. We ought to get behind it and help them. And that's exactly what happened. And when the vote came, 78% of the people voted for a tax increase. 78%. The next thing that happened was the balance of that fire district said, how come little Kerman got paramedics and none of the rest of us got it? And guess what? The next election, the rest of the district got it. And then we got on the board. Let me give you the story because it keeps going. We got on the board, and we're not dummies, us Rotarians. And we got on the board and we saw, well, you know, this paramedic system that we got in there, we think we can save some money. And so we restructured it. And I can remember the county supervisor coming to my office and said, what the hell do you think you're doing, Ken? I said, well, we're just trying to save taxpayers money. We think we can save, you know, maybe $5,000, $10,000 out of that $100,000. You know what we saved? $35,000. Yeah. Guess what? The county of Fresno adopted our program 2 years after that because we saved so much money. All right. But the story's not over. On April 27th, last year, my brother, who also lives in this little town, is driving down the road, passing by the fire department where the paramedics are stationed, and he felt a ping in his heart, and he said, I'm pulling over, and he pulled right over, and he went into the office of the paramedics, and he collapsed, and they flatlined, died. The paramedics grabbed out their paddles, revived him, and he's alive today. Wow. You don't know the impact that you can have and how close it can affect you personally. And you sit down there and you know, I gave that story at the Zone Institute about, that was the first time I gave that story. And that was about in November, so 6 months or 7 months ago. But I invited my brother, he had no idea I was going to do that. Son of a gun, he starts to cry. And I'm up there trying to give a speech and he's crying. Now I start to cry, you know. I said, I don't want to be like Rick King, crying all the time. Rick is my friend, okay? I can do that, But anyway, you see, we are really talking about humanitarian service. And when if you can capture that, with your club and say, well, what are we doing here? We got all kinds of things that we can do in this community. The more individuals that we have in our club, the more money that we can raise, the more power that we can have, the more community service projects we can do, the more help that we can give, and we can affect it. And that's the reason why, and we can re-energize our club. We can like get the young people in and start doing that, okay? So that's the pitch that I've got for you, and if you can understand that, you'll have success. All right, I'm doing good. All right, now I want to go to, there was a question. You were going to give a question. Do you think I forgot you? You know how come I didn't forget you? The guy in the back over there going. All right, what's your question?
Oh, you kind of made a comment to it on the youth. A person 30 years old. If we look in the room here, I'm sure we're 95% over 50 years old.
Yep.
I would say that. So the youth of today, to get a new member in, a youth that's 30 years old, born in '83, how are they going to come in if they don't understand anything about, let's say, Rotary, what it does, about eradicating polio? To them, polio is probably a non-word to them.
Yeah, and it is a non-word to them.
And so there's kind of this problem of bringing in the youth to keep the organization going. And when we eradicate polio, what will Rotary's charter be?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the future?
I'm not going to answer that last question because that's a question for a seminar, and we don't have another time for that. But I will answer the first question for you. I think all of us in the upper echelons recognize that we have a real problem. And so, as your director, I set aside what we call focus groups. First time, and by the way, I get to toot my horn a little bit here. I got Rotary International to accept this concept of what we did over here in this particular zone. Most of the zones have past district governor involvement of approximately 50 people. We had 350 people helping us on different types of projects, and one of them was the question that you asked: how are we going to get our youth involved? At our Zone Institute, we announced a brand new program called Rotary Refresh. And we utilized zone funds because we didn't even go to Rotary International for it. I said, this is so important. And then we spent about $10,000. And I didn't bring it with me, I'm sorry I didn't, where you can actually go on and they have the program established. And let me just give you the results of what we did up in Portland, Oregon area. We formed a young professional club. That young professional club started with about 30 members. They're on the internet. All of this is all described in great detail, and I'll get it back to you. It's called Rotary Refresh, and I'm sorry I just can't remember. You might go rotaryrefresh.com and you might find all the information, but I'll get it back to Roy, who in turn will get it back to you. And so they're on the, I guess, Facebook. Maybe it's Twitter. I'm not sure which one it is because, I'm one of those old guys. You can see this right here. Okay? And they have over 1,000 hits on their Facebook every month. They have people that show up to their club because of a speaker. They said, I just saw this, and you invited people to come in. They have people showing up at their club to listen to a speaker. They have people showing up at their service projects. I went up there to their charter night. It was really interesting. I'm sitting there, and I'm not sitting there, I'm talking to a group of about 6 or 8, and I said, what do you do for a living? And he explains this to me. I said, geez, I never even heard of that job. I go to the next one, what do you do? It's another one I never heard. All of them are doing jobs that I never even heard of, didn't even know what it was. What an eye-opener it was for me to see that. And in fact, that's what I said, hey, we need to capture what it is that they're doing. And so that is going to be replicated, and I can tell you next year it'll go worldwide. I can tell you that because I'm going to be in charge, and I've already started putting things in order. It takes time for these things to happen. But this is what I really want to tell you. The club has 62 members today, and they only started less than a year ago. 62, went from 30 to 62, and it's just the way they do things. And we're missing that whole concept of the young people. So and I think it's critical.
But that's a club that's all in that age group.
Yeah. No, but that's not all. The second thing is, they have a total program on how to get those younger people into existing clubs. That's part of this, okay? I'm not done, all right? So I'm one of these guys that like to think outside of the box. And so in Arizona, I was invited to a think tank group. Would you like to come be in a think tank group in one of the most renowned universities? And I know you've never heard of it, but this university has been ranked the #1 university in global management for the past 17 years in a row, called Thunderbird in Arizona. They asked me to come to their think tank group, as a guest, and when I was there, I was impressed. I was impressed at what they were thinking and how they were doing things, and it just dawned on me, what are we doing? Why aren't we in this university recruiting new members? I mean, all of these people that graduate from their master's programs should be eligible Rotarians, and they had one particular program in which they had to work 2 years before they could go into their particular master's program. So they have 2 master's programs, and that's the one I zeroed in on. And so I took that to the board of directors less than a month ago. It was approved by the board of directors. We have established that a club is going to be established in that particular university. We have all kinds of things that are happening, and so we're in the formation stages. One of the things is that when they graduate, and if they are interested in Rotary, they have to go back to their country in which they came from, and 56% of the people come from a foreign country, and that's the rules of that university. And we will invite them to join Rotary in the country in which they came from, with 2 caveats. Caveat number 1 is that they have to find a community service project within the community that they're going to, and give it to the club, and the club is supposed to implement that, and that's to affect the humanitarian side that I talked about a few minutes ago. And number 2, they're to invite their peers. And that concept came back from what happened to me when I joined Rotary at age 23 and took my wife into the club, and she says, what are we doing in this old man's club? And I said, you know, sweetheart, this is my club. I was one of those cocky little kids, you know. And so I immediately invited 8 of my friends, and we kind of took over the club. When I said we took over the club, we had all the energy, we wanted to do everything, and all these old guys had all the money. So it was really a perfect fit for us. And then we set up who was going to be the president for the next 8 years as well. And I said, why can't we ask these young Rotarians to invite their peers and set a goal of inviting 10, or if they can't invite 10, form their own new club in the same area. Now, if we get just 40, and I think we get a lot more than that, and they invite 10, we're talking about 400 Rotarians. And if we replicate that into 100 other universities, which is the goal, that's part of the goal, guess what? We'll have 40,000 new Rotarians every year in the age group that you're talking about. So yes, there are strategies that are being worked right now, tested to see where it works. This is a pilot program at Thunderbird University, and it's just adopted less than a month ago. In the back.
What are you calling the program? Refresh.
You know, I've been calling it the Thunderbird program for lack of a better word, but that's
just so we could follow
yeah.
and figure it out.
I've been calling it the Thunderbird program, and the board of directors, that's what we approved it under that particular term. And I have a conference call on it Monday morning, so you know, it's in the infancy stages right now.
Is there anything online about it yet?
No, it's brand new. I mean, it just got approved.
Good. Well,
Okay.
then it should be online.
Yeah, it should be.
Call me.
It should be. I will. If you'll send me an email of what you want, I'll get it to you. That's the way I do things now. And over here.
Regarding the question that was asked about young members, we have an example in our district, which is the Urban Rotary Club, and if you guys are interested, you can talk to us. We have tons of new members that are young. Tons of them are girls, also are women, which is even better because in my opinion, women are better leaders. And we did it in a different way, actually. And if you'd like, I'll share it. If you give
What I would, I think if you can share it in about 2 minutes, I think you go right ahead and share it.
Okay. What we did was we had what we did was we had an event in Woodbury in the beginning of last year, and the community was invited to that event. We took part in that event. We had a special place designated for us. We gave wine and beer, and obviously young people like that, and there was local groups there. They came to the club. They came only to have drinks. They talked to our members. Now, the fun thing about our club, and I don't know how it is in all the other clubs, but in our clubs, the more seasoned members are very young at heart, which helps a lot. And so they joined, they came to the meetings later. Once other young people come and see other young people that already joined the club, it runs on its own because you see young people and it's the energy that's in the club. And that's how we did it, and it worked beautifully. I don't know if probably you know, the Irvine Rotary Club was voted the best club in the district last year. I think that most of it, not all of it, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that we had a lot of members join our club, and many of them were young.
Thank you.
So
there's two things that I heard. One is that they held a specialized meeting. You'll find that strategy is included in the 15 tips, okay? Not specifically the way you described it, though. You had a little bit of a different twist to it, and I think that's great. Remember, you can put any twist to any of these things that you want. Number two, one of the strategies in the 15 tips are called Future Leaders of Rotary. It gives a complete strategy on how to gain 6 new members into your club if you will implement it, and the ages will be from 25 to 35 if you implement it, and that's in there. I'm not going to explain it right now. I'm going to say, look, if you really are serious about this, you got to study, you got to work, and then you got to put it together and do the strategies that you want. But that's in there as well, because we know that if we don't start getting younger members, we will die out. I think there was a question back here, Brett.
If I can take 2 minutes, if I can take you back to one of the comments you went over very quickly that I think is something that we could really use.
Sure.
As you mentioned, or you brought up exit interviews, and this is something I've thought of for a long time, is businesses do it all the time, why aren't we? But there's a problem with clubs doing an exit interview because the club may be the problem. Therefore, what you brought up to Roy that I would like to actually make a formal proposal is that every member that leaves a club in the district gets an exit interview from the district. That program is developed. Because I think that's a good service for district is, why did you leave? Because the club...
Yeah, what you're saying is that sometimes it's a club problem and they don't want to reveal what that is, whereas you have someone independent who might be willing to reveal that. And I think that's a good idea. And that's something that you and your committee may or may not choose to do. But you can see all of a sudden when we're sitting here and talking to each other, there's a lot of good ideas and we've got to share them. And the problem that I have seen in the past is that we don't share, I shouldn't say that, we don't do anything with the ideas. Roy, if you don't do something with that idea, and what I would recommend is that you contact Roy to follow through. It's your idea, you want him to contact him. I sat in a meeting that I thought, and saw an idea that I thought was phenomenal, and when the meeting was over, nobody did anything about it. And so you walk away and say, what was that for? And so, you know, I probably have been a very different type of director because I've opened things up to so many people. And so I will tell you this, the ideas that came from this zone of anything that I thought was of great value after my advisory board discussed it was taken right into the Rotary International headquarters, and we gave them a ton the last 2 years of new concepts and new ideas and so forth, all being generated here. And this is an interesting point. This West Coast has led the Rotary world for years and years. PETS came as a result of this. The International Institutes came as a result of this. GETS, NATS, all of these programs that are out there were developed here first, and so we continue that tradition. So we must share and we must have follow-up, but it is, I will tell you this, if you just make a statement, well, I think we should do this, and you don't take it by the horns of that bull, then it's your problem. Did I say something wrong? I didn't think so. I started to say something else, but it was better. All right, let's go. I want to spend, we've got about 20 more minutes or so, and I want to talk about a problem called retention, okay? Because we don't seem to address it, but there are strategies that if we'll use, I can guarantee, and I say guarantee because I've done this over and over and over, and every time I see things done, it is successful. If we will but use it, we will not have the retention problem that we are having today. But before I say that, we need to understand that we are going to lose some members. For example, if you take an actuarial study of the Rotarians, we're going to lose 20 to 30,000 of our members every year by death. And until someone learns how to raise them from the dead, I don't think we have a solution to that problem. okay? Number two, we are in a very mobile society here in the United States particularly. And when us older folks were growing up, I'm going to go the generation before me, the tradition was that you get into a job and you stay with that job and you stay until you die. And then my generation usually made a change of about 1, maybe 2 at the most, and that's all. And then the next generation is going a little bit quicker, and now we're finding that people coming into their businesses stay about 2 years before they make a lateral move or a move up into another company and they move out. Now, we can't really solve that problem because they're going to make their moves. We can do some things that would perhaps keep them if we do like whoever it was that said, one of you said today, we need to, that was you, Roy, we need to invite people to join Rotary, not necessarily a club. And that's a mindset change, is what that is. It is a phenomenal mind change. That's why I asked you, did you hear it? Okay? If we can get into that, and then do a tracking system, which we actually established this in 2001. If we can perfect that, and we are now in the process of perfecting it on the international level through our new computerization system, we might be able to solve some of that. But when we sit down and look at the overall picture, we don't have good information. That's why the exit interview is a very good idea. We do know that some people leave Rotary because they don't like the way the leadership is handled. And I can tell you that, again, just passed at this last meeting was a whole leadership program that was developed, guess who for? Directors. To teach the directors. You would think the directors ought to know how to be leaders. And I will tell you, sadly, that a lot of them don't. Okay? You would think they would, but a lot of them don't. There's too much micromanaging going on, too much this going on, that. But what we've discovered is that has trickled right on down into the club levels as well. And so we said, we've got to start up here, teach that particular group, and then start moving it down and get it out. And that just passed as well. Okay. And that came from the West Coast as well. And that was done by David Cresson. So some of you may know David and his surveys and so forth that he did. And that came out of one of our focus groups. So that's how these things develop. All right. Let's get back to the retention. How do we retain members? How do we retain members? What has to be done? And there's, interesting enough, it's called 3 tips on retention in there, and there are 5 ideas. There are 5 ideas in the new one. The old one started off, and we left it at 3 tips, okay? We kind of like it fun, and I can tell you that when these ideas were presented to Rotary International, they were stunned that we already had them because they thought they had something new, but the West Coast had it already, but we haven't implemented it because our membership chairmen are not following through and making sure this implemented. So what are those 3 major tips?
Make the club an active club.
Okay, it's got to be active. So, and that's part of it, but it's got to be something. So you're right. So, but we're talking about a new member coming in the club. How do we get him active? What do we do?
I think one of the things that you have to do is give them a mentor. You have to have someone who's
Okay.
not going to hold their hand, but make telephone calls to them, encourage them to attend the meetings, and encourage them to participate in whatever your service projects are.
So that is the first one that we talk about in here. And I'm going to go, yours is the second one. So I want to talk about the first one, if you don't mind first, is that we say every new Rotarian needs a friend. That's it. And it should not be the one that invited them in, because they already know that person. So they need a mentor. So in that little book, guess what? There is a mentoring program. What the mentor should do, what his duties or her duties or responsibilities are, and what they expect to be done, and there should be a return and report system with it to the membership committee. Did you take this individual to a district conference? Did you take them to this assembly? Did you do this? Did you do that? And so forth. That's the mentor's responsibility. So, and the goal is just exactly what you said, is to develop that friendship. Okay? Because if people have friends in Rotary, they'll stay. They will stay. You know, there's a great statement out there that says, I joined Rotary for fellowship and networking. Those are the 2 things they use. And I stayed in Rotary to change the world. I love that particular one. It came from my own district governor. I had nothing to do with it, but when I heard it, I fell in love with that statement. So that is the first thing. Every Rotarian needs a friend. The second thing deals with involvement. Okay. Every Rotarian needs an assignment. So I'm going to ask you the question, when should that assignment be given out? As soon as possible, right away. Okay, and those are non-answers, by the way, for me. Okay, those are non-answers. Because see, what for as soon as possible means when I get around to doing it. Okay, seriously. Or what was the other word that said right away? Right away could mean next year. Okay, so I don't. Though those answers are correct, they're not good enough for me. So. The day they're installed is what you say. How many agree with that? That is the recommendation. So now we have to ask the question, well, how in the heck are we going to give them an assignment? And how does that work? Anyone have a suggestion?
Get them on a committee.
Right in the back.
Have the mentor, when they're talking with them, find out what their interest is. Why did they join?
But what if we haven't given them a mentor? That's a good way. That's a good way if we've given a mentor before they join the club. But remember, when they join the club, it's the day that we give the assignment. And if we haven't done that, then that's not going to work unless we do it earlier. But it is a good suggestion. I wouldn't dismiss it. So how are you going to do that?
Talk to them.
Who?
Membership chairman.
Oh my gosh, the membership chairman has another responsibility. Do you understand when I say that the membership chairman needs to have 4, 5, 6 people on their committee? If they are going to do this, they need to talk to them. But why? Why would we want to talk to them?
What's your interest in Rotary? Why
Yeah.
don't you join our club?
Yeah.
Put them in the
Boom,
committee.
put them in there. Okay. So you're absolutely 100% correct. Okay? Have the membership chairman get out and get that information. Well, what does the membership chairman do with that information? Who gives the assignment? So, you're right. What do you mean by guidance? Hopefully you got the right answer, but that's where I'm going to.
Nurture them.
Yeah. Every Rotarian needs to be nurtured. Okay, so that's guidance. That's education. So you should have a program. And when a new member comes into your club, what do? You say, okay, tomorrow we're going over at Larry's house, who is the chairman of the foundation, and he's going to have to serve you coffee and cupcakes, and he's going to spend an hour talking about what the Rotary Foundation is, what the Paul Harris Fellow is, what matching grants that we're doing, and so forth, because you think these people know it? I mean, half of you don't know it yet. Excuse me, I said that. But you know what I'm talking about. You see, we make an assumption that they know everything, but they don't. They're lost. So that's it. And so you do that. You can do that once a month. You can do it. And guess what? It's in the book. It's in that little pamphlet. Every program that I'm talking about here is there for you, but you have to read it and implement it, and that falls on the shoulders of who? Membership chairman. Okay? Presidents, listen to me carefully. You hold the membership chairman's feet to the fire. You cannot do it. If you think as a club president that you're going to do all of this, you're going to fail because you have other things that you have to do. But you have a membership chairman who is responsible for all of this, and bring them into your meetings every time you have your, I guess, monthly meetings, and say, okay, give us a report on what's happening out there. Okay? I'd even ask for a report as who are the prospects that you plan on bringing in next week. That's what I would do. Okay? Questions on that? All right. Now, let's go to the last, and I've got, I think, about, how much time I've got? About 5 or 10 minutes? 5 or 10 minutes, okay. Now, let's talk about the two things. I want to talk about the Premier Club program. If you look inside the folder, you will see that there are 18 different jobs that an individual can do. We've talked about most of them already. The mentoring programs in there, the nourishing programs in there, the seminars are in there. All of these things that we've been talking about are in there, and they get a point. Every member in your club gets a point for doing different things. And what you're doing is that you're sitting down and saying, look, membership is a club responsibility, and I expect every member to do something. Now, here's a list. Choose what you want to do. You know, if you bring in a new member, we get 25 bonus points. And if the new member brings in a new member, there's another 20 points on top of that. And before you know it, it's very easy to become a Premier Club. In fact, it's so easy we think we ought to tighten it up a little bit. But we haven't done that yet. But you've got to get everybody involved. Then, here's the key of all the keys. It's called what? Does anyone, you've already said it, so let me see if I can pull it back out of you. What have you got to get from everybody? Oh, you're with me. Now, we can focus. Now we're going to get the commitment. I'm wearing a pin here. It's an Ignite pin. Isn't it pretty? How many of you love this pin? I'll report that back to my daughter. She's the one that created it. That's true. Okay. Now, the commitment pin is an unusual type of thing. The first time that I am aware that we ever tried this was back in 1990. And the governor went around and just asked at the club visits, the board of directors, just the board of directors, if they would commit to bringing in a new member, and if they would, they get this pin. And the district grew 7% by that one program. The second time it was tried on a worldwide basis, and that's when we had a 55,000 growth. So this is a real key. I mean, this is a real key. It is a commitment that goes like this. Jeff, come on, I need your help again. Let me get mine. And before I do this, let me preface it this way. What has happened is that every district governor has taken this commitment, and it includes more for the district governor than it does what we're doing here. And every district governor has been asked if they will go to every club president and commit the club president, and then turn around and give 10 of these pins to the club president, and the club president is to commit 10 more people. So you see what we're doing is we're going bigger, 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 bigger. Okay? And so if it works by 50%, it means that every club should have about 5 people. And that's about where it works. We're on it right around 50%. It comes with a card. I want to read the card to you. This is written by past district governor Barbara Feder in Arizona. And this is, by the way, a torch. This is what it is. And it's Ignite. And she wrote these words. From the ancient times, the torchbearers have been first on the path of discovery and exploration and battle, illuminating the way for those that follow. Rotarians, commit to be a torchbearer who will invite, unite, and ignite new members whose fire and energy will add to ours to help overcome the darkness of poverty, illiteracy, hunger, and disease. Now you look, it talks about all that we're trying to do, the humanitarian services that are called. There's a reason there's a card. I could give you all the strategies behind everything. There's a reason for the card. We know what happens. They take the card, they put it in the pocket, and they read it about 3 or 4 times to re-emphasize what it is that we're doing. But in order to get this commitment, you say, Jeff, will you pledge to bring in a new member this year? You may wear this pin with honor. When you bring that new man in or woman, let you and I sit down and talk and congratulate each other. Okay? Thank you. Now, when you do it individually, one-on-one, you will have success. If you just pass them out, you will not. Okay? And you have to have a commitment, and you notice the return to report. Sit down and have a cup of coffee or something. Okay? It works. If they say no, and I had one board member say, no, I won't make that commitment. I'd like to have the pin. The answer is what? No. 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 That particular individual called me back two months later He says, I brought in a new member. Now can I have a pin? Yes. Okay. All right. So it works, but you got to work. You don't want to give the pins away just for nothing. All right. Now I'm basically through. I thank you for your time and.
Ken, thank you so much. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Don't you think every Rotary meeting should be like this?
Right on.
So the answer is to have Ken come to all of our Rotary meetings. No, this was really excellent. Ken, thank you again. Thank you very much. Oh, looks like our governor has a surprise.
It is a surprise to the governor because my wonderful executive team debated long and quite length as to what would be in this bag. So frankly, I have no idea. But